Yep, we're live. It says we're live. I've shared it on the Of, By, and For the People's Facebook page. It's not an event. We didn't plan this one. We planned it, but it's not one of those that I made an event for. So it is may not get a lot of watches today, but I'm sure we'll get a lot of listens when I put it out. Oh, I've got the wrong mic or the wrong speaker. Hold on. This is why I always check it before I bring the guest up. And bada bing, bada boom. Yep, there we go. We're all good now on Facebook. So I've had some conversations recently with folks, and I wanted just to bring up this topic. I've done some solo rants about this over the last 3 or 4 years, and it comes up in Of, By, and For the People conversations, and my conversations, frankly, with Jeff Styles that I have a couple times a week. And Jeff comes from a different political view on some issues, and on some he and I are solidly in lockstep with. But it's the it gets used almost, I think, to shut conversations down now of the slippery slope. Like every time a conservative brings something up, and I'm not saying it's true, I'm saying this is what you'll hear. You bring up something, you go, "What about the next step?" Oh, it's a slippery slope, so we can't move forward at all because you're always fear mongering, talking about the slippery slope. Well, before I bring my guest up, I'll just point to two things. 5 or 6 years ago, there was this small headline about bathroom controversies, I think, in North Carolina. And everybody was like, oh, but what happens if there's a mistake and somebody goes in the wrong bathroom or women feel uncomfortable? And we were told as conservatives, I was told personally with friends, hey, that's never going to happen. You're overreacting. You're exaggerating things. You're not being kind. Just back off. Just what do you care? What big deal is it to you? Fast forward 4, 5, 6 years later, here we are. Just it's all around us as far as trying to get everybody to believe something that's never been believed before, and that is that men can be women and women can be men and men can get pregnant, and if you feel a certain way, you are, and they conflate the two. You can have your own personal experience, but doesn't mean you can have a society built on there are no consistent truths, there are no standards, there are no norms. You can't. If you don't have those, something to lay down beside to put policies in place around, you're not going to be able to have a society that'll hold together. There's nothing there to bind us. Like these are things we believe in together. Doesn't mean you can't go do things a little different in your house or your world, but we got to have some places to believe in. And the second one is Dennis Prager was on with Bill Maher. Maybe it was 4 years ago. It may have been longer. It may have been more recent. I can't remember, but it's years. And he was on with Bill Maher, and Bill Maher has his show, and he had a couple of liberals on with him. But Dennis Prager is very conservative. PragerU, who I love most of their stuff, and Bill and Dennis Prager just brought up something and random. He goes, Bill, one of the things that's frustrating me is the left saying these kind of outrageous things that aren't true, like men can menstruate, and Bill Maher and the panel tore him apart. They laughed at him. They didn't laugh with him. They laughed at him. They made fun of him on that program. I've seen the video clips. And fast forward 4 or 5 years later, Bill Maher's now on his own show going, what are we doing in the world we're living in? So when people say there's no slippery slopes, I push back and say there absolutely are slippery slopes. And if you're a parent out there and you have a child that's hanging out with someone that you know is not a good influence or has bad perspectives, you get worried about your kid. Why? Because you know that one thing can lead to the next thing, which can lead to habits, which can lead to a life that you don't want for your child. What's that called? That's called a slippery slope. That's why you tell them to set boundaries and guidelines and put things in place to make sure they stay on track. So there's my rant. I'm going to bring up a friend of mine. Let me pull this off. I'm going to bring up Matthew Durham. He can tell you who he is and what he does. And then we're going to just talk about some slippery slopes. I've got 6 or 7 things. But I was recently, just to reiterate, the reason I reached out to Matthew, I've had some friends of mine say, when the Target is an example, why don't you just walk by the displays in the front with the tuck-friendly bathing suits? Why just don't take your kids to the drag show parades where the men are dressed as women twerking in front of kids? I've got the screenshots if you want to see that. They're all around. Don't take your kid to the drag queen story hour. Don't buy the beer. Just don't. Why do you got to make it public? Why do you got to hurt people's feelings? What's the big deal on trying to make people do these things and say these things? And I'm again like it's a slippery slope. What's the difference? How do you tell that this is right, but you can make junior high students wear pride shirts, and if they don't, they get in trouble, which has happened in a couple of schools. 3, 2, 1, Matthew Durham, what's up?
Hey, Clint, how you doing?
I'm good. I wanted to get my stuff out of the way because I'm going to use your brain now to kind of solidify some of my thoughts. But I wanted the people to understand that this was not coming from a place of I don't like people. This is coming from a place of, I don't know how you hold a society together when you tell young people as early as kindergarten, middle school, elementary school, even high school, and even young adults, there are no truths. Your truth is your truth. Anybody that says different is being mean, hateful, bigoted, homophobic, transphobic, whatever phobic we're throwing on things nowadays. First of all, do you agree with that statement? You got to have some societal truths to build a society on. And then, who in the hell are you and what do you do?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen,
Um,
thanks for listening to the podcast.
Yep.
Tell everybody who you are, buddy.
QED. My name is Matthew Durham. I'm a research project manager at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, where I oversee a project that is studying how people's worldviews and their faith changes over time. Um, at UTC, I received my master's degree in psychology, my undergraduate degree in philosophy. And before all of that, I did cancer research for about 8 years. And I'm now doing my best at homesteading in the suburbs of Chattanooga.
Okay. So when I reached out to you, and I'm just sharing this on another page real quick, we got a couple of viewers. When I reached out to you about this topic, you said, "Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about this." You heard my little opening rant. Do you have one of your own? Do you want to give me your? Let me memorize that. Do you have one? Do you have a take on all of this as a big topic before we get started, or would you rather me just jump in and ask some questions?
Well, one, just to comment upon sort of just the immediate dismissal of slippery slope as a legitimate concern. I know you took some philosophy classes in college as well, so you may have encountered the technical name for it is reductio ad absurdum. It's where you extend a person's argument out to its logical, absurd conclusion, and then you argue over whether that is, you just did that correctly, right?
Right.
You don't say the correct argument to respond to that is never, well, you don't get to extend my argument. Like, that's just ridiculous. Why would you ever extend my argument out to its, logical conclusions?
Right.
No, that's an old technique in philosophy. We've been doing it for a very, very long time. So the slippery slope being just immediately dismissed as ridiculous, that's ahistorical and anti-philosophical, frankly, if you want to get deep on it. If you don't, your kids doing things and meeting kids that you are worried will be a bad influence. That's also something that any parent, any friend, anyone with anyone that they care about can appreciate. There was a term that I was thinking of when you mentioned that, and then I forgot it. So perhaps if it comes back, I'll mention it again. But yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump off on on to build on what you just said quickly. So if you remember, just interject, just interrupt. I do it to you all the time. There's no ego here, but it's just like it frustrates me because if you have a house in a neighborhood and the homeowner, you like the homeowner, whatever, but the house all of a sudden starts going downhill. The yard's not kept up. The house doesn't. And I'm not talking about because it's overgrown. I mean, the houses start falling down around. Everybody in the neighborhood gets worried for two reasons. One, is our neighbor okay? But two, that's going to affect the things around us. I never understood this concept of white people can't talk about issues when it comes to people of color. You can't talk about issues when it comes to a woman. If you didn't serve in the military, you don't have it. You can't say we want to be diverse and be a melting pot and then say you don't have an opinion unless you fit in this little narrow topic. I can't tell you what it's like to be a woman, but I can talk about the relationship between men and women because that's part what we do. Can't tell you what it's like to be an African American, but by God, I got a lot of friends that are African Americans. I grew up around them. I hang out with them. I love them. Some of them I don't love. Has nothing to do with the color of skin. Has to do with I've met a lot of African Americans are assholes, just like a lot of white people. And so we ought to be able to have these conversations. And the slippery slope, in my opinion, is something that is 100% one of the issues we have when we're trying to put policies in place based off a sliver of our population. And if we can't have these conversations, if we don't acknowledge, hey, where is an end game on this? Then what I see as a result, without them saying a word, is it's okay if our society becomes so segmented and separate and so individualistic that there is no society. That's how you can put a pride flag in the middle with American flags on the side, because we are not That flag represents a bunch of individual identities and not one people with a group of thought that can share some commonalities. And that's a very dangerous place for me personally. And if I've overstated that in your world, let me know.
No, sadly, my brain has still not reminded me of what I was thinking of earlier.
I've done all I can, dude. My wisdom tank's been dumped out in 11 minutes, so we're
You're
screwed.
fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. If it happens, it happens. I'm not in control of it at this point.
All right, so let me just ask you this question then. I'll jump right into it. I don't care if you want to take Budweiser. I don't care if you want to take Disney, the Fox Network, Chick-fil-A to some degree. If you want to take Target, right? Budweiser, Target, whatever. Target specifically of just walk by the display. What does that have to do with you? Why does that bother you? Why can't you let people, if they want to buy it, and you just go buy something else in the store? And I have my opinion on that. And let's use Target. Let's talk about specifically our opinions on Target. But then we're going to branch that off and talk about these other companies and how it has to do with ESG, cultural clout, politics. It's not going to, this whole conversation will not be centered on Target, but we're going to use that as a genesis, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that? Because I have mine, but I'd rather hear yours first. I think so would other people.
But let me see if I can, before I sort of offer mine, let me try to steel man those who would disagree with me on this.
Okay.
Hopefully I'm able to do it in a way that they would agree with. Okay. Yeah, Target has a lot of different customers, right? They've got people who believe all kinds of different things. People who believe that, you should have a regular bathing suit, and people who believe that you should have a tuck-friendly bathing suit, right? And they want to serve all of those customers. So for the purposes of appealing to as broad of an audience as possible, why not cast that net as widely as possible? That's going to make them more money. That's the objective of a corporation anyway, is to maximize shareholder value, right? So why would you not want them to be offering this particular product when they can make money off of it?
Okay.
And if you don't like it, whatever, you can go down the aisle and you can buy something that you do. You don't have to make such of a big deal of it with all of the other folks that do want it. Why is what they do and what they purchase with their money any business of yours? You think they shouldn't have companies that cater to their needs as well?
Right. I hear it. Yeah. By the way, you're doing a great job. Right now, I'm ready to get in the podcast. I think I was just wrong. Good job.
Okay. Well, hopefully I did a good enough job. If hopefully the people that you've talked to would recognize that as being pretty comparable to their own.
It's almost what I heard verbatim from the couple of folks I talked to.
Okay. All right. So it takes this very I think that argument is mixing some things inappropriately, which we won't be quite getting into immediately, but perhaps as the conversation unfolds, it'll be more apparent why there's some contradictions with what's going on in that statement. And also, full disclosure, I am not, I have no significant expertise. I've read some books on this topic. So I don't have an MBA. This is sort of armchair prognosticating.
Well, yeah.
At this point. So
okay.
Don't take any of this as gospel, is my recommendation to our viewers. Okay. So what's going on with that argument? Well, one, Target has demographics that it's trying to appeal to. It has existing demographics that it's trying to appeal to with its marketing. You're a marketing guy. You know this better than I do. And they know that those particular demographics have certain interests. They know that this other demographic that wants the tuck-friendly bathing suits, that wants the woke stuff, that wants all the pride merchandise, is from an opposing demographic.
All right.
So they know that by offering products that specifically wade into that that are built to be relevant to that conversation, right?
Mhm.
They are potentially stepping in on the side of one of those two different demographic groups that are their customers. Now, if they had gone in and they had also simultaneously put out bathing suits that said there's only two genders,
Yeah.
right? Then maybe I might be willing to accept the argument that that this is just a neutral thing, that they're doing it to maximize their profits, right? Um, if they had gone in and put out, if they stocked books that were gender critical, like Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage, which not only did they choose not to stock it, but they removed it after they already had it in stock when it came
Yep.
out. So it's hard for me to hear that argument and say, well, they're just trying to appeal to everyone, all of their customers, as wide of a customer base as possible. No, they're not. They're only offering products that are built into elements of this culture war for one side of that culture war on this issue.
All right, can I push back?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is where I'm trying. Okay, because I hear what you're saying and I agree with you, but I would hear no, they're not only building it for one section. If you want a bathing suit for genetically what you call men and women, there's bathing suits for women over here and bathing suits for men over there too. My issue comes from this whole thing gets lumped together, and I think this is intentional, Matthew, because it's the pride stuff versus the tuck friendly bathing suits. The tuck friendly bathing suits were not built for kids. I get it; they were adult sizes. I understand, but they were up front. They were this pride display. There was kid stuff around it, and what frustrates me, I would trust someone's argument and what you're saying more if those same people who said, "Listen, if you want to have it in the back of the store for people, that's fine, I guess." But then stand up and say, but I'm not going to stand and see a grown man twerk at a trans or pride parade in front of a 7-year-old, or have someone that's got a beard welcome people in Disney World, into little girls into the little fairyland place where they buy their dresses. I'm waiting for somebody on that side of the aisle, and I know they're out there, but on prominent basis, stand up and go, we do not have to say all things are equal. So when you go to the Target thing, in my world, how they were displaying it and where they were displaying it was part of it. When you walked right into the store, that was part of the issue. Does that make sense? So my pushback was, I can still find bathing suits for men and women if that's how you want to identify traditionally. So they're not making stuff just for the pride, or just for the trans, the people that identify as trans.
Sure.
And so, am I wrong on that?
No, I actually hadn't heard that the tuck-friendly bathing suits were adult sizes only.
I think
So
they were.
That may shift things a little bit for me, frankly. Now, though, to your point, if you're putting it in and amongst stuff that is specifically designed to advertise to children as well, that gets a little murkier. So I still don't think it's clean as an argument.
I think they know what they're doing. And this, I heard another argument. I'll hate to go against my grain and your grain, but I had a guy post, but look at, they're using bright colors that are attractive to girls. You know what else is attractive? And they use bright colors on bathing suits? Women. Women have beautifully bright colored bathing suits a lot of times. And so I think sometimes as conservatives, we try to make all things equal. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to say, why are you putting it up front? Why is it not adjacent with the children's stuff? And why are we having little t-shirts for 3-year-olds that have to say things about sexuality? What's just love? What you can say love, that's an umbrella. And everybody knows that's the new kindness, to be kind and to love, and these great words. And if I argue back against it, does that mean I'm not loving? I'm not kind? And so backing up to the trans and the tuck friendly one, the tuck friendly bathing suits. There used to be a time and place in society when people had some mental issues or mental things we would help them walk through that. And at the end of that, if you came out with the same conclusion, we would be like, okay. But it doesn't seem like we're there anymore. It just seems like we're indulging Matthew's truth individually amongst the rest of us.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's been the world we've been living in since at least the 1980s. I mean, you saw it probably the biggest initial push into the national conscious that you saw that idea of like live your truth, right? Was the Oprah Winfrey show. You
Oh
saw
yeah.
her, it's like her using that kind of language all the time, and it's this push into uh, a siloed knowledge. Let me see if I can break that out. So everyone is basically in their own knowledge silos where you can only talk about your own experience
Mhm.
because everyone else has their own truth, and there's no common ground between us, between our silos. That's all just a social construction, and we have to argue about that. And whoever wins is just winning because they're in power and they're able to oppress other people with their win. That's the world we've been in, unfortunately, to one degree or another for the last 30, 40 years. It's become more apparent, especially in the last 10, that that's where we are. Maybe I'm extending that out by 40 years because I'm talking about academia.
Yeah.
Um, but in the broader conversation outside of academia, yeah, last 10 to 15 years, we've really, really seen it explode. I remember even in my undergraduate work in the 2000s, being told that I could not criticize someone from another culture. I
Mhm.
couldn't criticize anyone else's religious ideas if I wasn't also a member of that religion. Like none of it. You have to be an insider in order to do any criticism at all. And it struck this. It struck me as deeply confused because I could look back at my life even at that point, and so many times where I'd learned something, it's because I had engaged with someone outside of my bubble.
Well, because they're asking questions that people inside your bubble may forget to ask. And this is and maybe I'm
Mhm.
making an argument by extension here, and I shouldn't do it, but this is how you also get to the same place of if do you wear the white lab coat? You can't question
Right.
statistics. You're not smart enough. When's the last biology class you took? You can't talk. I'm not saying I'm a technical. I'm not saying I'm a doctor. I'm saying I'm asking questions and I can reason out data when I read it for the most part. And so I know this seems like a big glob of mess right now, but all of these little things are part of that slippery slope. Can I back up and revisit the tuck stuff, the tuck friendly
Yeah.
bathing suits?
Yeah. Yeah.
Megan Kelly went on, by the way, Megan Kelly's a beast. I love Megan Kelly. Anybody that doesn't like Megan Kelly, that's on you. I think she's awesome. But she went off on the whole tuck friendly bathing suits. My question is, they were putting it in the women's section, if I'm not mistaken. See how these issues kind of overlap? Why is it not in the men's section? And going back to this, it's not just about what we're doing to the kids. It's now the kids see that the society is saying that women can be men and men can be women. They're in the stores, they see people buy. It's that we are eroding truth. I don't want to say about proxy, but almost nod, wink, wink, and unintentionally that kids see it. They're absorbing it. They don't have to you don't have to sit in front of Matthew the 6-year-old and go, now let me tell you the lie. They just see us accepting that, and there's no pushback from the people they trust the most a lot of times in their lives. So I see a dude buying a woman's bathing suit, and so I guess that men can be women. And I saw a dude, the first pregnant man on the cover of a magazine. I guess a man can get pregnant, and and I want to love people too. And this is how my family and the teachers are telling me that love is identified as. And I'm having these classes and there's arguments over books, and mom and dad are mad all the time. That little confusing picture I just painted you, does that make sense when it comes to the slippery slopes?
Yes. And some of that is just going to be the normal process, certainly as a parent, of giving your child knowledge about the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're going to be confused by things inevitably because the world
Yes.
is not a perfectly understandable thing or an easily understandable thing for that
Mm-hmm.
matter. So some degree of that is just unavoidable, and that's part of your job as a parent. However, um, to your point, yes, it it does create a great degree of needless confusion on things that humans have known, that animals have known for as long as we have existed. Um, And the people who defend this stuff, we've all heard it for a long time. Well, you're talking about sex, and you're confusing that with gender. And that's, unfortunately, that's more of a criticism that really they should be pointing at themselves, that they have forgotten what sex is. And you can't really even get a straight answer from a lot of folks when you ask, okay, what is it exactly that differentiates a male from a female?
Right. Well, that's that documentary, What is a Woman, right?
Right. Yes. And there's some answers that people will give, chromosomes and whatnot, that are sort of getting in the right direction. The correct answer is gametes, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is your body set up to produce sperm, or is it set up to produce eggs? That's it.
Yeah.
There's no third gamete. There's no spectrum of gametes. You can't impregnate yourself because you can't make both. Sorry.
Thank you.
But
and we're deplatformed. But go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, it's a very simple, straightforward way to tell the difference, and it just, for whatever reason, it's, to your point, it can actually get you deplatformed to say it in certain spaces. So my big worry with marketing a lot of this stuff in the direction of kids, and we've seen that with Pride being all over the place in schools. We've seen it with bringing in drag queens for Drag Queen Story Hour. The objective clearly is to bring a lot of these conversations about, well, sex and gender are a lot more fungible and a lot more variant than those old bigots used to think. And you want to be a happy, warm, compassionate, kind person, don't you? So embrace the spectrum. Is sort
Wear
of
the shirt and shut up.
Yeah, right. What was the Seinfeld thing? Wear the
the
pin.
little ribbon. Kramer.
Yeah, wear the ribbon.
Do you want your ribbon? No. Hey, this guy's not wearing a ribbon.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't want to wear the ribbon. Yeah. So I mean, this is a very tricky conversation, unfortunately, to have, even though it shouldn't be. And I have people who I care deeply about who really hate it when I get on this conversation or this topic, because they get really uncomfortable the moment we go here. And I've had to, unfortunately, I guess it's just my responsibility as a parent, I've had to clarify certain things when inevitably, my son hears someone talking about a topic in a given way, and my impression is that person what they've said needs additional clarification, more details. And he annoys my son a bit.
Well, but
it is what it is.
I think this is intentional. Me and you have talked about it. I think the confusion of, are we talking pride? Are we talking, is it about same-sex marriage? Is it about transvestites reading to kids at Story Hour? And so all of this kind of lays under that flag, but not all things are the same. And the reason I wanted to call this slippery slopes is I've asked my friend this. So if me and you are in agreement on should men be able to think they're women and dress as women, if we say yes to that, let's say me and you agree, let's play the little game, right? Yes. Okay. Should they be able to go to bars like that? Yes. It's an adult play. Absolutely. Okay. Should they be able to, what's the next step? Go to the bathroom of their choice. If you say yes, okay, yes. And what happens is I get to a point, and I do this with my friends, and I go, should they be able to stand at the door at Disney and welcome little girls in to buy their clothes? Yes. Okay. Should they be able to twerk in front of a 6-year-old at a pride parade in San Francisco or LA? No. Oh, so there's the line. So now we found a line on the slippery slope. How do you, who said yes back here, defend saying no to the same people now that you were supporting? How do you say that unless along the way you were saying morally, I may think the next step is okay, but societal wise, we have to say no now. And you can live the life you want outside of that, but we have to say no to something now, because at some point you then are going to be on the other side pointing, going, hey, we shouldn't be doing that. And then you're going to be the bigot. I don't understand how that doesn't make sense. Am I just common sense wise off base in that analogy?
Everyone's going to have their line that they're going to draw somewhere.
That's my point. But me and
yeah.
yours may be different.
Right.
So how
Absolutely.
do we build a policy based off that? And if you get yours, I'm the bigot, and if I get mine, you're the bigot.
Right. I mean, that's the democratic process. And I don't know that we have a better answer. Right? We have to be able to have these conversations out in the open without getting censored, without getting canceled. And people have to have an opportunity to try to persuade each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to recognize that there's going to be some percentage of people involved that are going to be bad faith actors that are going to be actively trying to prevent that conversation, actively trying to label anyone who disagrees with them as a bigot, and that they are not there to participate in the process of persuasion. And there needs to be very strong societal consequences. You should lose your reputation when you try to pull that sort of routine. And this is all wonderfully laid out at the level of mathematics, actually, in a game theory, which is really, really cool. If you want to see how it works, there is a website called The Evolution of Trust. And it's like a little 30-minute game that you play through. And you play this game, and by the end of it, you will have learned exactly how a working system can be overcome and torn to pieces by a bad actor.
What's it called?
It's called The Evolution of Trust. It's a neat little website that talks about how trust can build up in a system and be undermined in a system using the actual math from game theory.
And it's a website? Because I'm looking.
It's just called a website.
Evolution of Trust feed notes. I'm trying to find just Evolution of Trust website, the website. I was going to post the link. I see in the headlines a lot. I just don't see a direct website. Maybe I'm missing
it's
it.
ncase.me.
Okay, that's it then. I found it. I just didn't. It didn't say that. So
yeah, that's the one. Really, really cool. I've used it to initiate conversation with my son when he was about 8. And we had hours of conversation about the implications of how trust can be undermined in a system, and how reputation can be used to effectively prevent bad actors from tearing the system apart.
Huh. Well, what's really weird right now as we're doing this live, stay with me, will you please?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. Hang on, folks. Ain't that something? I may have to go to my phone and see if we're still live.
Oh, did we get booted?
I don't know. I can't. My face, it's not even responding, and it's saying the post has been removed. So I'm not saying we're not live. So be careful what we're saying right now. But hold on. Dude, I think they took us off. Hold on. Stay with me.
Yep.
Can you get on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook right now.
Go look at my page.
Let's see.
Well, I know it says we're live. We're still live. Okay. All right. I just don't get any comments on it. And right now I can't post anything to Facebook, and it's saying all posts have been removed when I try to look at anything. Can you see my page?
I'm looking at the post right now. It says you are currently live.
Okay. I listen, on my end, it says my Facebook page is not available. So I'm just gonna pull it off. We'll keep talking like we're live.
Okay.
We'll just keep doing this because it is recording. So if it's not live, we'll go record later. I tried to post the link, and it said this cannot be posted, and your post has been removed 4 times. And now I can't even pull up Facebook. So
that's interesting. I did see a link to community standards at the bottom of it.
Yeah, I can't get on
So
Facebook. You
I
have
don't
been
know.
blocked from Facebook. I'm not able to get on Facebook right now. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
We'll figure it out. So let's keep talking. We're recording, and the great thing is I can always put this out on podcast platforms. So if people are watching, let us know if we're live or not. And I think there's only a couple because we didn't make an event out of this. But so I apologize for that interruption, Matthew. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all
But
right.
it freaked me out because I was going to post that link, and Facebook basically shot me a bird and said, no, you can't do that. Okay, so to back up, the one thing I wanted to bring up, and you tell me where you were at on the building the trust. Where were we? Because I lost my train of thought a little bit. Susan, oh, there we go. Yeah, I can still see you. Thank you. All right. So my whole purpose on this was not to alienate people, just to restate it a little bit and get my head back together, because again, it won't let me post anything, is not to get alienate people. It's because I believe that we are now a more tolerant society than we've ever been. I don't care what the headlines tell us. And I believe there should be room for everybody, no matter what you believe, as long as we can also make policies. And this is what I was saying to you beforehand, Matthew, and this is where you came up with some topics you wanted to bring up. We have to have those established norms. We have to have some sense of standards. And it doesn't mean that if you're not in the air quote norm, that you're bad. Somehow we got into this thing. If you don't believe what the majority believe, or if you're not part of what we were going to say is the truth or what needs to be affirmed in society for the masses, doesn't mean you're evil. Doesn't mean we want bad things for you. It doesn't mean we don't make allowances. None of that is true. But it also doesn't mean that we should reorganize society and have zero truths. Does that make sense, or am I off base on that?
Yeah, there's no way to have any kind of a common public square. There's no way to have a community if you're not orienting around something that everybody has in common.
Right.
Out of many, one is gosh, it's on our coinage, right?
E pluribus unum. Is that
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
I just want everybody
And
to know that I knew something Matthew didn't. You're
there you go.
welcome. I think that's a good place to maybe just footnote the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you have to have some norms. You have to have established ways of figuring out, okay, what's actually going on here.
Right.
Otherwise, we can't trade with each other. We can't talk to each other. We can't live near each other.
And you sure as
It
hell
just
can't make policies for 350 million people out of 350 million truths.
no, not at all. Does everybody have their own perspectives and opinions and interests and whatever? Sure, but
Yeah.
that's not truth. That's not what we're talking about. And there's one of the things that I wanted to bring up on this specific question is that there is, especially in the realm of sex, gender, and sexuality, there is a movement that is directly opposed to the establishment of any kind of norms or truths in those areas. It's we did a podcast on critical race theory a couple weeks ago. I am not as well read in this other area of the literature, which is queer theory, as I am in CRT. However, I have read enough of it that I'm confident in saying that the central goal of queer theory is not to increase acceptance for gays, lesbians, bisexuals, people with gender dysphoria. The central goal of queer theory is to destroy all norms related to sex, gender, and sexuality.
Which then will destroy the family.
Because they see norms as themselves exclusionary and oppressive. All by themselves. The moment you have a norm is the moment that some people are going to fall outside of that norm, and now you're excluding.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I know a number of people that would fall under the LBGT or the LBG part of that, and have the same commentary that you and I have on it's what I am, it's who I am, and I don't need the parade. I just need to live the life. And they too get upset when they see any agenda pushed on somebody without the ability to check out of the class, without the ability to not have it endorsed by the masses. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not like it's us against them. I'm just trying to ask questions and figure out where is this push coming from to get in front of these 7-year-olds as fast as possible. We saw this disingenuous headline from Florida about the air quote "don't say gay" bill, which was insulting to friends. And I listened to one of my podcasts, Dave Rubin, who's married to a guy and they've got a couple of kids. I love his commentary. He and I disagree on some stuff, but I think he's brilliant. And even he was like, he lives in Florida. The bill does not say the word. And I've had this conversation with folks. Little stuff like that is what erodes the truth, because the kids, they sit in the back seats and they listen to the podcast where they're here saying, they're sitting in the room and they watch the headlines on the news. They hear the mom and dads discussing it with neighbors, and they're absorbing this, and it's not true. And you combine this with the stuff we see at Target. You combine this with what you just said about queer theory, whose destruction of norms. And it's hard to believe it's not kind of an orchestrated thing, especially when you see the headlines like book banning in schools. And it's not a book banning in school. It's just saying we don't want certain books in libraries. You can go buy it at Barnes and Noble a lot of times. You can buy it at, off online. It's not what they're saying it is. And yet we're having conversations around it like it's the truth, right? Like we're talking about the "don't say gay" bill. Before I ever have that conversation with my friend Jeff Stiles, I don't accept the premise of that. I say, well, that's not what the bill is. Does that make sense at all? Or am I off track on trying to have these conversations that way? And did I just take what you were trying to say and go a completely different direction?
No, no. I think it is important to recognize that there is a bombardment of messaging on this issue that is unlike anything that we've seen, frankly, outside of the last 5-10 years. It's interesting that after the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage, we didn't see a substantial decrease in the amount of messaging for LGBT acceptance. That's just a personal observation. I don't have data to support that offhand. But if anything, it's ramped up further, right? One way to measure that might be how it's no longer Pride Day or Pride Week or Pride Month. In fact, we're now seeing who was it that it was a major government, I think I want to say, that was saying we need to have Pride season.
Right.
So the felt need to push the acceptance message has only increased as more and more rights have been secured for the very people that presumably the activists are standing up for. So that to me says, okay, it should be that as you secure more and more rights, we should feel better about the world, right? Your argument was we're in a more tolerant place than we've ever been.
I agree with that. I think so. Yes.
I think that's true in some areas, and in others, I think we can get there again, but I think we're actually less tolerant in some areas than we used to be, specifically in terms of political identification.
Okay, and I would agree with you, especially when it comes to conservative views. That's what I would say. And you come from, so everybody knows, you come from more of a liberal background, by the way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't put that in my intro, but I'm politically purple. I'm a mix of red and blue, right?
And you come from the blue, though. You've moved more red, but again, we've talked about this. That's more of the topics and the party moving, and you've evolved a little bit, but you've also seen enough to know the party's moved a little bit while you're standing there like, hey, why have all of a sudden you labeling me red when
it's moved substantially? I remember having conversations in the mid 2000s where a conservative would say, look, if you let gay marriage happen, then there's a lot of potential things down that slippery slope that are likely going to happen. I'm paraphrasing here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, saying things like the dissolution of the family, sexualizing children. And was one of the big concerns about comprehensive sexual education in our schools was that the move was going to be to sexualize children eventually. What do you think Drag Queen Story Hour is?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think family-friendly drag brunches are?
Look on
Um,
Sesame Street, cartoons now in the movies. They are sprinkling it in everywhere when that's the slippery slope you're referring to.
it is, and I could get if we had more time, I could get into detail in the actual academic literature that the queer theorists themselves have written about drag queen story hour, and drag queen brunches and children being in attendance, and how this is, what the purpose behind it is. They're not hiding what it is that they're trying to do. Um, Nevertheless, we'll hold. That's not the central theme of this discussion, so I'll hold off.
Okay.
Um, so that's sort of the that's one of the pieces, I think, for why we're seeing this push. Why is Target all of a sudden selling this stuff, where if you would have asked them 10, 15 years ago if they were going to do something like this, they, I think, legitimately, we can all assume safely that they would look at you like you're a crazy person. One piece of it is that there is an ideological foundation that has been getting set, and that foundation is built by queer theory. But who's building the rest of the house? Like, there's more to this than just a bunch of academics writing stupid papers and getting them published in their own stupid journals that they themselves have created.
I'm sure that's how they refer to it too. Our
Yeah,
stupid journals. Yeah.
absolutely. I've read enough of them to know that there's no academic rigor in anything that they do.
Okay.
So I'm perfectly happy using normal language to call them what they are, which is
Okay.
stupid. So so the second big piece, and I may have a little bit of an unorthodox view on this compared to a lot of people that are concerned about it, is the push for more and more companies to align themselves with specific environmental, social, and governance goals. You've heard ESG,
Right.
and in order to get that, in order to get in with the cool kids in ESG, you have to have a high environmental, social, governance score. And what does that do for you? It gives you a lot of it gets you in with the cool kids. So of course you have the benefits of engaging at a national and international level with leaders who are aligned with this movement. There's some clout there that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Two, there is easier access to loans, business loans.
Right.
I believe they call them sustainability loans.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a lower credit rating or lower interest rate on your loans if you have a higher ESG score.
Right.
This is something that most, if not all of our banks, our big banks, are now bought into. And in fact, the big banks will not offer loans, or they will offer them at such massive interest rates that a lot of companies that we would normally think of as sort of under the category of sin stocks, right? So
Mm-hmm.
your weapons manufacturers, oil and gas, they are unable to fund new projects because it's exorbitantly expensive. They don't have enough fluid cash on their own to fund these new projects. So they're just kind of sitting on their laurels at this point, making as much money as they can from their existing infrastructure. Why do you think our gas prices are higher than they have been in a while?
Right.
There's no new drilling. Government won't issue new drilling rights, and they can't even if they did have the drilling rights, they struggle with getting loans unless if they push for a high ESG score.
Oh, am I allowed to interrupt just 1 second?
Shoot.
Just really quick, because I went and looked up the top 100 ESG companies, and you'd be amazed if you're someone who is just carrying the banner of leftism and wokeism, not leftism, because I believe in liberals and conservatives. The MAGA Trump people and then the woke people, both are two extremes that I think we've had that podcast last week, Changing Worldviews. But people would be amazed that how many oil companies are on the top 100 ESGs along with cigarette companies, because they are They'll put the right things on social media. They will give enough money to the right organizations. They do enough diversity training inside their companies. So all of these little things add up. And I was going to ask you, we were going live talking about ESGs. When did we leave that Disney is there to create products and memories for children? When did we leave that Budweiser provides a beer for their target audience? That Fox is supposed to deliver news. So is CNN. When did we leave this? The companies are supposed to provide the widget. They're not supposed to provide the widget, and also make sure they have a political statement. And what's the guy from the one world government dude that said, we've got to
Klaus Schwab.
no, okay, it was the BlackRock guy. So we have to change
Larry Fink.
behaviors. We have to change behaviors, whether people
Forced.
like it or not. Forced change
Forced
behavior.
behaviors.
That's on video. It's not, you can that's not misinformation. So when did that happen? And that's all part of this ESG. That's why they can have such high scores, right?
It is, yeah. That's one of the ways that they're able to do it is, effectively by woke washing, right? Just do all the things that are on the list that the companies who do the scoring systems tell you that you need to do, and you can employ them. You can bring in some consultants at a high cost, of course, in order to tell you what it is that you need to do better.
Right.
And those companies will happily send out one of their representatives as a consultant, and you'll pay a nominal fee. And then you can go start doing the things that they tell you that you need to do. Yeah. So, and it doesn't just apply to loans. It also applies to insurance as well for projects, because the insurance companies are also in on it. If you want to learn more, you can read Capitalist Punishment by Vivek Ramaswamy, where he goes into extensive detail on all of this. With all footnoted up and referenced and all the good stuff you need to confirm everything he's saying is accurate.
Well, your eyes lit up when I brought this up before we went live. So is this a good opportunity to make sure you get that point out? Because this was one of those people, if you had hair, you said it would have blown it off.
Yeah. So how did all of this mess of everybody using ESG, you brought up Larry Fink, how did all of this come to be? Well, there's multiple actors. There's certainly the UN with their Sustainable Development Goals. There's Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, who also built a lot of the intellectual machinery and greased a lot of palms, presumably, in order to get together all of these elites, financial elites, into these to understand these ideas. But the big money machinery that we know of, there may be more than this, that is behind all of this, are three interrelated companies. If you've listened to frankly anybody who's not on the left over the last few years, you've heard of them. They are all owners in each other. All right, so they're major stockholders in each other. This is BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. I was curious to confirm how much assets under management these three different companies manage, right? So these are the companies that are managing like retirement funds and investment funds and whatnot, index funds, you name it.
Right.
So BlackRock, and this is all according to Statista.com, they are sitting at, as of last year, about eight. Hold on. Before I tell you the answer.
Okay.
How much money do you think BlackRock manages?
$2 billion.
Okay. $2 billion.
That, by the way, that'd be a lot.
It is a lot of money.
Yeah.
BlackRock manages $8.5 trillion in investment assets.
Okay.
Okay.
That's There's BlackRock. One of the three.
State Street, about 3.5 trillion. Vanguard, 8.1 trillion. Add that all up, and since they are all co-owners effectively of each other, and you're looking at $20.1 trillion of assets currently under management. That's retirement savings, right? Other people's money, not their own, but they manage it. So they control what.
So they go into these companies and they say, hey, we will invest in your company. But if you want our money, then you're going to have to do these things that will bring your ESG score up. And that's it. So I'm going to say something to you, and you, if you know this for a fact, great. Or if it's just your opinion, you can correct me. But that's why if you're Budweiser and you just go off the rails and then you double down and continue to support things even after you've blown your brand up, they care, but not that much because we've got money. It's not a money problem with us. Maybe that's the same with Target. Maybe it's the same with Disney. And I'm not saying that they don't want to lose money, but maybe they see down the road, this is all going to come back to us because we're doing, air quote, the thing we need to do to get that ESG score up.
There's massive incentives that push them in the direction of the ESG scores. So there's carrots, right? All the benefits that they get out of it. And then there's the sticks, which is not being able to get access to capital through loans and insurance. So yeah, you have a massive system now that is able to put huge amounts of pressure on companies to conform. Even companies that you wouldn't normally think are going to be caring about any of this stuff. The Lord's Chicken, right? Chick-fil-A has had a DEI office for 10 plus years.
Cracker Barrel.
Ford. Fox Corp, the owner of Fox News, just revealed yesterday. There was an investigative report, I want to say done by the Daily Wire.
Matt Walsh.
That revealed that they're providing all kinds of interesting materials to their employees and expecting them to agree and adhere to, frankly, queer theory, but the DEI agenda. So money talks, right? So you have this massive $20.1 trillion behemoth that effectively is able to look out at any company that they might potentially invest in and with all of their contacts and say, that sure is an awful nice company you got there. It would be a shame if anything would happen to it.
You need some neighborhood insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So this is all happening. And so I looked at that 20.1 trillion. And I'm like, gosh, okay, how much is that in relation to, say, the US GDP? Okay. US GDP. Remember, 20.1 trillion that those three companies, which are all incestuously co-owning each other, are managing. The United States GDP last year was $25.5 trillion.
Ooh.
Second largest government in the world's GDP, that would be China, sitting at just over $19 trillion. These three companies manage more money than China is able to create in a year in value. You think they don't have power? You don't think they have massive amounts of power to force change, as BlackRock CEO Larry Fink said he was going to need to do? You're nuts.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to back up and say two quick things. I think Facebook is having a problem, and then I'm going to come back to a topic. Okay. I think Facebook may be having a problem. I just logged back in. Now, I will say people are still watching, but on my Facebook page, our video is gone completely on mine. Facebook was down. I did a search real quick and it said Facebook was down for a while. So it could be that it's back up and it's just not up to real time. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, though, is all this stuff is tied together, though, Matthew, because if you go to what they're trying to do, if every little company does their, air quote, their part to push the ESG world, right? The social justice stuff, all of that. If they push a little bit here, a little bit there, it's in your, the Dodgers game, the Dodgers baseball game. It's over here in your school. It's at the library. It's on your social media, and it's from your company's training. If everybody does a little, then they do a lot, right? Then the 7-year-olds do absorb it, and it's easier to mold those minds. Plus, we don't want them to think that something's not normal about them. So we're going to affirm everything they are. Now, we don't affirm them. If a 13-year-old, I've said this on the podcast before, but if a 13-year-old were to walk into the doctor and go, listen, I don't have the muscles my buddies do. I identify somebody with more muscle. I would like to be given steroids, please. They're not going to do that. If a girl walks in at 12 and goes, everybody else has developed faster than I have, and I feel like I should be more developed at this point. Can I get some augmentation, or can I get some sort of hormones? Unless there's a real medical, like there's an issue there with the chemicals in their body. If everything comes back normal and they're going to be like, hey, it's not your time yet, they're not going to just do that. And so that to me is a big glaring thing, is if how I identify only goes one way and you're saying no to everything else. I can't even get a tattoo, but I can go do these things. All of these things play together. Back to the media, ESG. Matthew Durham runs Disney. The DeSantis puts a rule in place that says, hey, we're not going to talk about sexuality with kids from kindergarten to third grade in the state of Florida. So we label it the Don't Say Gay bill. The media, run out in front of Matthew Durham, who's the CEO of Disney. And I go, Matthew, you're in the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis just did something that's the Don't Say Gay bill. What do you think about that? Boom. And I put the microphone in your face. I now, as a company, knowing that what's coming behind the scenes, this ESG stuff, I know exactly what I need to say, because I cannot put the shareholders in jeopardy. What's getting me this is the shareholders are getting killed. How are there not suits coming against the companies for the fiduciary services they're supposed to provide, when I've bought stock in you, Matthew Durham, and Disney, and you're killing the stock on purpose? I don't get that. You're not doing things in the best interest of the company. You're doing it for best interest of whatever world you're trying to create. And that's not why I bought your stock. How are Blackguard, how are these Vanguard or whatever, the BlackRock, how are they still getting away with this without people just going, hey, I don't want my money to go to those folks?
That is actually something that I want to say quite a few state attorneys general have identified as a major potential legal problem. That in fact, adopting ESG at a company may constitute a very straightforward and very massive violation of that company's board of director or owner's fiduciary duty to their shareholders. Now, if you're not a publicly traded company and
Right.
you don't have shareholders, like, no worries, right? You don't have to worry about fiduciary duty as the owner. But the manager of that company, if the owner has hired you to manage that company for them, you have a fiduciary duty to the owner, and you could still be violating it towards them if they are themselves not wanting to adopt ESG. So people that try to sneak it in on the down low through DEI departments and whatnot are still potentially included in this violation of fiduciary duty, to the extent that it violates the company's capacity to be profitable. Now, the argument, and this is an old argument, that companies can do bad things.
Right.
And so we should be able to hold companies to account. And so there should be some kind of expectation of behavior at a company. And that's what a lot of defenders of ESG will say. Well, that's all it is, right? We're just expecting companies to behave appropriately. But they go far beyond like legal bad behavior in
Right.
ESG. Right, it's not just the classic example of the oil company, pouring their waste into the local river, right, and destroying the environment. That's the sort of the easy one where you say, well, yeah, of course they shouldn't be able to just do that in order to maximize
Yeah,
profit.
that's bad. We don't like that.
Right. They call that negative externalities, where there's something
Or shitty
happens.
business practice. Let me give
Right.
you the Eastridge business street lingo. Externalities. That's really bad business. That's not very thoughtful of your clientele, sir. But
This is me
continue on with
attempting
your
to.
academia words.
Yeah, it's me attempting to show that I have read something
You've got
to
something on the
back
wall
myself
that's in
up.
a frame, I think. But go ahead.
I don't have an MBA, so this is just from what I've read. But yeah, that was the idea, is that you need something to constrain companies from bad behavior in the pursuit of profit.
Right.
And one of the answers was, well, you make companies socially responsible. Right? You have all of these expectations of companies that they have to improve the world within which they exist. and not just focus on profits. The opposite argument has been, wait. You want to give companies power to influence every element of society because you want to make them socially responsible. You want to give them that much power to fix the bad apple problem. No. Hold back. Here's the reality. You've already given companies an absolute superpower,
Right.
by saying that if the company does something bad, the owners of that company are not liable. There's nowhere else in legal history, to my knowledge, where someone was not responsible for the actions of those underneath them. Right, the buck stops here has always been sort of the mentality. You know, if you order a soldier to do something evil and they do it, you are liable. Right, if the soldier does something evil and you should have stopped it but you didn't, you are liable. Right, it's still on you to some degree or another. But with a company, you're not. If this was done without your knowledge, right? The company is held liable, and the company is the one that pays out the damages, not you. The reason why this was done was to effectively unlock massive amounts of potential investment. If you're looking at if you could be personally liable for $100,000 investment that you make in something, if that company does something bad and you're personally liable, you're not going to make that investment. You're just not.
Right.
So that's a superpower. And the argument was between these two factions. On one side, well, we'll just give them even more power to be influential in our democracy so that we can have these moral expectations of them as well. And then the opposing argument was, no. What you do to rein them in is you say the only thing that they get to focus on is their own shareholder value. That's it. And they're going to do that by maximizing profits,
which will affect their decisions.
Right. Now,
Right.
Will that please every shareholder? Well, not necessarily, because each shareholder has their own interests, right? You and I are investing in a company. You want them to not do tuck-friendly bathing suits. I don't care, right? So we may be on. This is just a hypothetical.
No, I get it, but we both invested expecting a return on that dollar.
Right. Now, the reason why maximizing profits works as a solution to this problem is that, okay, they focused on getting each of us as much money as possible. You can then take that profit and you can invest it in an activist group of your choice that is trying to get these things removed, right? Everybody can then take those profits. It's a neutral way of rewarding all of the shareholders. But unfortunately, we're in a place now where the social responsibility, the corporate responsibility, has now taken primacy. And as a consequence, 50% of all of the dystopian future books and movies that you've ever encountered, where there's these massive corporate giants that become more powerful than countries, is now on the table, very straightforwardly on the table. And you cannot look at that triumvirate of companies that are all primary stockholders in each other, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, with assets under management that almost equal the yearly GDP of the United States, and say that they are not now rivaling almost every single country on the face of the planet with the amount of power that they can exert in the world.
So, two quick things, a couple quick things. One is, I did not know this. You probably did. Did you know that countries can have an overall ESG score too?
Yeah. And towns.
Yeah, I did not know this. And so I'm looking it up. The bottom 10, very high risk. I'm looking at the top 10, which United States is not in. And I'm looking at the bottom 10, which United States is not in. But I thought that was pretty telling. I did not know that at all.
And there's different organizations that are responsible for the scoring within the E, within the S, and within the G piece as well.
Okay. Yeah, because it just broke down in those three components. Yeah. And I'm just kind of looking at it. Anyway, So I want to say that, but the other two things I wanted to say, first of all, one of the things that I see as conservatives that I think we missed the boat on, and I've said this about other things when it comes to race relations. I think conservatives handled a lot of stuff poorly over the last 20, 30 years. And it's not when it comes to businesses, is that we bought into the quote from the 80s, greed is good. And I'm not saying doing the most you can and getting the most you can and wanting to accumulate stuff, is that how you measure success? If that's you, that's all in. I'm not saying being greedy is inherent evil up until a point, though. And then when we get to the point where greed for the company at any cost is how you get people dumping dirty water into clean water, right? I'm not going to invest in new technologies because that's going to eat into my bottom line, which is going to eat into my shareholders, which is going to make me lose my job. So we've lost this ability to have conversations about, again, what are some truths we agree on? Holding corporations accountable for good business practices. We should all be able to define those terms in a way that maximizes profits and does it in a morally beneficial way, a morally acceptable way. But we lost track of that. The slippery slope went the other way. Conservatives forget there's a slippery slope on the other side of this too. Profited with no boundaries, it becomes greed and tyrannical too. I mean, it's almost the full circle. If you go too far one way or the other, you start going over you slip off the edges. And the other thing I was going to bring up is this whole ESG. Now that we know that, countries can have ESG scores too, it's not just the Targets and the Budweisers and the Fords and the Disneys. It's not just the schools and the libraries. It's not just your neighbors and social media. It's now your government is pushing this too. So there's really no way to escape it. We've seen this happen, and we've seen the debates starting to flare up when around education. Well, Matthew, you run the educational district. Guess what? If you don't do A, B, and C, we're going to withhold some money from you. Now, we saw a little bit of this around the COVID vaccines, and there was a lot of pushback, as there should have been. But we're starting to see this. We can call it whatever you want. It's blackmail. It's 100% blackmail. It's what the government's doing. They're taking your tax dollars. They're coming to your local school system. They're saying, if you don't do certain things, we are going to withhold your dollars. And so when the government gets involved with this, and this is Ben Shapiro's words, but there's at the end of that is the threat of jail or violence. In other words, you do what we want, or there are consequences that are going to affect your life. And that's a scary place. So then it's almost everywhere I turn, I shrink a little bit. I get a little quieter. I get a little more meeker. I want to be kind. Even if I don't believe it, I'm going to start saying the right things because, man, I only got so long on this earth. I don't want everywhere I turn there to be a fight. Does any of my little rant in the last minute and a half make sense?
It does. And I think the reason why we should confront that fear and push past it is that, frankly, it's going to be worse if we don't talk now. It's going to continue to get harder and harder and harder to speak up, so long as these trajectories continue in the direction they're going. If you think it's hard to speak up now, just wait for this to go on for a few more years. So the sooner you can speak up, the sooner you can say something, talk to your friends, your family, the better. And of course, do this with the knowledge that, frankly, so much of this is not made obvious through the media. So most people are going to have no clue, and it's going to probably sound ridiculous, unfortunately. But when you do actually pay attention to what these companies themselves are telling you, it becomes, I think, very straightforward very quickly. The second thing is, and I alluded to being a little bit unorthodox. You look at some of these companies, and frankly, you're just amazed that they would be buying into any of this stuff. Are we going to see Hobby Lobby next? Right? Like, I wouldn't discount the possibility. But there's no way that every single one of these companies all at the same time is buying into every single one of these things. There's no way. Humans are way too complicated for that. And there would be too many advantages to being the outsider and being able to cater to an audience that wasn't woke. for every single one of these companies to be pushing in this direction.
Right.
So one of the things that I would encourage our listeners to consider is that I used the New York mafia voice earlier when I was talking about, that's a nice business you got there.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe it was Boston. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not-
it could be Sand Mountain, dude. I got family in Sand Mountain. They'll just listen. They'll burn your shit down too, buddy.
But yeah, like some of these businesses, not all, some of them genuinely are in both feet first, but some of these businesses may need help.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I apologize. I need to apologize to you. I've been a little scattered because literally Facebook was down. And for 20 minutes, for 15 minutes, if you were on your phone, you could watch it. And I think some people may have been able to see it, but I had 2 messages like, "Hey, yeah, the video's gone." And it's back up now. I just posted the link. So I was a little distracted during this conversation, Matthew. I apologize if it kind of hurt the flow, but I mean, I was just making sure that we were still going to be able to put it up. I do have though. Well, let me finish that thought. I am interested or a little curious about how they may need help because I think it's a strange way that they're doing it. If that's the case, I don't understand. I mean, because it's not like there's an absence of pushback on this. I mean, we see that they can look on the headlines and see Budweiser tanking, Target getting hammered, Disney getting special, so everybody's like, well, you're going after Disney. Disney just got to operate by the same business principles as most other businesses now. They don't get to have their own little city. I'm not saying it's fair or not, but it's not like they just said you just lose all business benefits. So there's enough pushback out there that if Matthew Durham, the CEO of ABC Widget Company, came out and said, listen, we're having to live by this ESG. We need people to do business with us because we're not going to abide by it. And we're going to go out of business if we don't. I am telling you, we've seen the Daily Wire. We've seen other people. People would spend money with them more than they've ever spent. Look at what's going on with Budweiser. People are ready to take their money to places. If you just show me the ball game, just show me the damn ball game. I don't need the sticker. I don't need the emblem on the floor. I just want to watch the ball game. I want to have the beer. I want to take the kids shopping or watch the cartoon. And I don't want what you think society should look like inside that. And if it does, that's what art is. But be upfront with it, and then I can choose to take my kid to it. And I think if that's true, and there are people out there that do need the help in the businesses, then I'm not questioning their judgment because it's a scary place to be. But I'm telling you right now, if one of them ever hears this, do it. Step out because people will spend their money with you like absolutely right this second. If you come out and say you're being held hostage by a behind the scenes BlackRock ESG thing that says you haven't, like, no, my employees aren't doing this. They're just not doing it. And we see the guy running for president started his own. The guy, you can say his name, I can't. Vivek Ramaswamy.
Vivek Ramaswamy, yeah.
It's
Who
something.
started
You didn't make fun of me.
Strive
Good job,
Financial.
buddy. Yeah, you didn't make fun of me. Strive Financial. And I know you got to go, but real quick, do you have 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Top 100 ESG companies. I'm just going to rattle off a couple in the top. ConocoPhillips. You ever heard of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Ma'am. Let's see. Merck, Apple, Texas Instruments, JB Hunt Transport. Worthington Industries is number 1. I'm just going to go down through here. Chinari Energy, they do gas and oil pipelines. They're number 11. See, MasterCard, Chevron, number 14. Marathon Petroleum, number 15. Let's see. I'm going ConocoPhillips again, which is just the export side. The other was the pipeline side. Air Products and Chemicals. Williams Company, which is oil and gas integrated. Dominion Energy, utility diversified. That may be a different one right there, but I'm just not in the top. I'm not out of the top 30 yet. And I bring that up to let you know, back to what you and I were talking about. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of Valvoline. There's all kinds of Exxon Mobil. There's all kinds of these petroleum oil and gas companies that are on there that you would think aren't ESG friendly. Why are they so highly ranked? Because it's because of what you've been talking about behind the scenes. There is a different carrot and stick than what we've been led to believe via the stock market only.
It's not about, or it is very little about actually getting profits.
Because they'll
Yeah,
buy the stock.
yeah, and Vanguard and State Street and BlackRock make their money off of fees, not profits.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So they don't really.
That's my understanding of their business model, right? They just want more money to manage. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily matter to them if their funds actually make any money.
Interesting. All right. I'm going to give you the chance to wrap it up. So be thinking how you want to end this, and it's a good place for you to say stuff that we may have missed or that you wanted to make sure you share with us, whether it takes 60 seconds or 5 minutes. I don't care. I'm going to give you some time to think and just restate my purpose of this conversation. I had talks with a few people I know, and it was basically, why are you so worried about these things that companies are doing? And in a vacuum, if they were by themselves, I would understand the argument. But I think we are missing. I think my friends were missing the bigger picture of This is one puzzle piece. This is a tapestry of a bigger narrative. That it's a little here, a little there, and we are being forced into different behaviors and beliefs that some of it counteracts science, some of it counteracts religion, some of it just counteracts common sense. And if you stand up against it, you are not tolerant. And that is to me, opposite of what I'm trying to preach. I don't mind. I try to be as tolerant as possible up until the point I feel I am being forced to say, do, believe, and train in things that I disagree with and that the science disagrees with. And so, with all that being said, I wanted to have a conversation about slippery slopes, because if you can look back over the last 5 or 6 years and not see that that is a true concern for conservatives and liberals, then I think you're missing the boat. That's my 2 cents on this, sir. It's yours.
15 years ago, if someone would have told me we were going to be here and that the left was going to be defending what they're defending, I would have told you were nuts.
Because you were considered left. You considered yourself left, right?
Yeah, I was more to the left than I am today. And the left was not as well. The general public left was not as left as they are now, I would say. And they don't. Almost none of them, frankly, when I talk to them, have any sense for how they're different from how they used to be. I would love to have like an interview that I could show them of themselves from 15 years ago on their political positions, and let them compare and comment on kind of where they see. And it would be fascinating for conservatives too. But
absolutely,
that would be really illuminating, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah, I think the one thing that I most want to keep in the forefront of my own head is, how do we make sure that there's a lifeline for companies so that they know that if they step away from this, that they have customers that are going to support them. That may not be enough that is not enough by itself, because of what we talked about with like loan financing and insurance and all of the pressure that they get from these big investment companies. But it is absolutely one piece. The second piece is pushing for your legislators, your state's attorneys general, to pursue legal action for the very obvious legal coercion that is happening. There's just no avoiding it at this point, as far as I can tell. If a bunch of oil and gas companies got together to decide that they were all going to do the same thing to set prices, we would consider that to be an antitrust violation.
Collusion, yeah.
Right. If a bunch of investment firms get together to enforce moral behaviors on other companies and ensure that they are, for example, talking to all of their oil and gas companies that they invest in and say, you're not going to ramp up production, you're going to lower your production, or we're not going to approve funding for new production. The outcome is precisely the same. They're doing the same damn thing. So it has to be pursued both legally and politically. But as far as individual people can do, making sure that in any engagement that they have with these companies, that they're making it clear, hey, you step away from this stuff, I will absolutely support you. Or if there's new people who are starting new companies to try to operate outside of this system, you support them too.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to say this too. If you're just out there listening to this, one of the things you can do personally is you don't have to accept the labels people give you. It doesn't make you anti. The bills aren't anti anything. They can be pro. The other side of anti is pro. So when somebody says that you're not accepting or kind or loving, I disagree with that. I've said some really difficult things to people I love the very most. I've been very kind to people by saying no to certain things when I thought it was in their best interest. And I've said yes to things that I may have not said yes to 10 years ago because I too have changed. So it does not make you not accepting to agree that there are some things that we just agree to and some things we disagree to. So you don't have to get upset and mad, but also you don't have to accept the labels that they make you wear. It doesn't mean you're not accepting. And then the other thing I will encourage people to do is go back and listen to conversations that you and I have had, and a few of them even with Eric Buchanan, the equality versus equity, world and political changing views, critical race theory, the Durham report, Trump indictment, and now this one, slippery slopes. I think these are really big conversations around some really sensitive topics that I think have been really good for me personally. It's helped me clarify some stuff. And I've had really good feedback on them. So I would encourage people to go listen to them because I think they come from a place of you bringing more blue to the table, Eric bringing more of a libertarian view to the table. I'm more, conservative, but closer to the middle. I'm not near on the MAGA side of it. And I just think that is, I think those are good conversations. And I feel like I'm really lucky to have these, the people around me that can bring academic thought and maybe be more articulate with their words to the conversations. Cause I've got the questions. I mean, I've got the opinions, but I form my opinions at Waffle House a lot of times. They're not always the very best, but I love the idea of it. All right, man. This is always fun, and I appreciate it. I am going to challenge everybody that we are going to try to do one in the next couple of months on the education system, and I am working like a dog to get a educator, a current or former one. And I have a way on this platform, if anybody's listening, to actually do it in an anonymous way. I think I can block them out. I would love, 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 love to have somebody inside the education system to say something from firsthand knowledge rather than what I see anecdotally or looking at articles, which are just as, they can be just as valid. But I would love to get somebody inside the system that to kind of confirm some stuff I think, and maybe tell me I'm full of crap. That's fine too.
That sounds awesome.
Matthew Durham, you're always good with your time. Are you going to go plant something?
I need to tie up some tomatoes using the Florida weave method. Which
what is that? What's the Florida weave method? Are you appropriating a weave? What are we doing here, David? What kind of appropriation are you doing today?
You got tomatoes in between big, tall, super tall steaks.
Yeah.
And then you start weaving a string around each of the steaks, and then you come back so that it's on both sides of the tomato, and then you do that all the way up as it grows, and that way you're not tying it around the tomato, which is how you screw up your tomatoes, like I did, because as the tomato grows, the tomato plant grows, the string gets embedded into the stem of the plant and damages the plant. Yeah, so Florida weave.
Look at you. Is your wife enjoying this journey too?
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I'll send you a picture of the garden. It is exploding.
So. Are you going to homeschool? Are you still homeschooling your kid?
Not right now, though. That may change. There's been some staffing changes at his school, and I'm hoping that things don't go out of control as a consequence. The only reason I've been okay with it to this point is because there's some good people that have been able to hold things in check. But
yeah,
we'll see.
I'll say this: I am really pro everyone else doing homeschooling and pulling their kids out of the system. If that had been left up to me, though, my kids would have been totally screwed. So I would have not known about the Florida weave. We'd have been just like, well, okay, kids, this is where food comes from. So this is aisle 3. This is where you get your cereals. Watermelon comes from aisle 1. What's the problem?
Only learned about it this week, so I don't feel too bad.
All right, Dave. Thank you very much. Go have a fantastic weekend. Happy Father's Day, man.
Oh, yeah, you too, man.
Yeah. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.